Hi everyone, welcome back to In Conversation. Today I am very excited because we have a very special guest, Dr. Gabriele Weichart from the Department of Social and Cultural Anthropology, University of Vienna, Austria. UNNES in Conversation. Gabriele Weichart is a senior lecturer at the Department of Social and Cultural Anthropology at the University of Vienna, Austria. After completing her doctorate studies at the University of Vienna in 1997, she worked as a researcher and teacher at the University of Heidelberg, Germany, and as an associate researcher at the Maison Asie-Pacifique in Marseilles, France in 2004 up to 2005. Her research interests include the anthropology of material culture, especially vernacular architecture and art, cultural heritage and memory, disaster and social cultural resilience, as well as food and consumption. Since 1990, she has conducted extensive field work in Indonesia and Australia and has been a visiting researcher and lecturer at various institutions in many countries, most recently at Universitas Negeri Semarang, Gadjah Mada University, and the Australian National University. She received the UNIVIE International Award 2017 for her achievements in establishing and promoting collaboration with Indonesian universities. Since 2018, she has coordinated Indonesian language courses at the University of Vienna in cooperation with the Indonesian Embassy in Austria. So, hi Gabriele, how are you today?
Oh, hello. Thank you. Thank you very much, not only for asking me this, but for inviting me to this show and to this talk show. And I feel very honored and very pleased to have the opportunity also to get to know you and your colleagues at UNNES.
We thank you, Gabriele. Thank you for your time and thank you for stopping by here at the In Conversation. So, Gabriele, could you please tell us a bit more about your activities at UNNES? Because I heard that you had a public lecture, for the Department of Sociology and Anthropology, the Faculty of Social and Political Sciences at UNNES.
Yes, actually, this morning I had the opportunity to meet a large group of your students and also some of the lecturers. And I was asked to give a lecture with an introduction to anthropology. But I thought, perhaps the students don't know and won't hear much about anthropology in Central Europe and especially in Austria. So I decided to focus on that. And you have to ask the students then how it went and if they enjoyed it or if they got something out of it. But from my point of view, it was all right. It was quite successful and I got a lot of questions afterwards and many of the students wanted to take pictures. So I think it was okay.
Yeah, so this is your first time to visit UNNES?
Yes, that's right. And I've been asked before to visit, but unfortunately it just did not work out with the time. But it's not my first time to Semarang, it's my third time. And believe it or not, the first time I was here in 1986. Yeah.
Wow.
So that's a long time ago.
Yeah.
And of course, much has changed and I don't remember very much anymore from 1986.
Yeah. So was it for research or for
No,
teaching
back then
activities?
I was a student.
Yeah.
And I was backpacking through Indonesia and had the opportunity to stay with a local family for a few days. And so that was purely personal experience.
I think you're very familiar with Indonesia then.
Well, I know some areas, but you see, that's like with many things in life, I guess. The more you know, the more you know that you know very little of it, and there's still a lot more to discover and a lot more to learn. And so I would consider myself still rather a student or somebody who is learning about Indonesia than being an expert.
Yeah. Okay, Gabriele. So talking about the anthropology, because you've mentioned that you did a public lecture about the anthropology in Australia, and then I think that you have a tremendous understanding about the anthropology in Indonesia. So could you tell us more about the current affairs on Indonesia's anthropology, or maybe in Austria's anthropology?
Well, I think we have a very different history, the two countries. Like Austrian anthropology, like the anthropology of other European countries, was very much linked with discovering another world, exotic countries, partly also then work together with colonial powers, etc. Whereas in Indonesia it was established after independence, and of course also having strong roots also in Dutch anthropology and close links. But I think also the focus and the interest was different. Whereas in Austria we tried to learn about the other. I think in Indonesia it was to discover yourselves in the way, having a large country with many diverse cultures and languages, etc. So I think anthropology also helped in a way in nation building, in strengthening Indonesian identity and understanding of the diversity that it has. Of course, that's already many decades ago, that first at least nation building process. And now I think the two anthropologists have been approaching much more. We live in in one world, and I think everybody recognizes that we cannot really separate the different continents or saying, oh, this is the West and the East anymore. And therefore, I think many of our young people also have similar interests, similar worries, can say. And so I see actually what in French you would say a rapprochement, so something that it's getting closer. And perhaps something which, at least when I talk to colleagues of mine in Indonesia, and they confirm that this is also the case here, that young people are increasingly becoming also more aware of themselves, or what to find out about themselves. And if you want to phrase it negatively, you could say a bit of navel gazing. It is, but we find this in Europe. But I have learned, at least, that also in Indonesia this is now the case. So we have some similarities.
Yeah, Gabriele, based on your recent research entitled Javanese Architecture between Heritage and Mobility, so could you tell us more about what was your motivation anyway to do investigation on Javanese architecture? Because for me, from the accounting background, so I think it's a very interesting topic. So can you share?
Yeah, my first encounter, can say, on the academic level also with Javanese traditional vernacular architecture dates back a bit more than 10 years already. And that was when I was invited to join a research group on the rehabilitation of buildings, of also some of them traditional buildings in Java, but then also in Sumatra after the big earthquakes. In Java it was the Bantul earthquake in 2006. And so colleagues of mine from Austria, from architecture, but also from UGM architecture, and also some anthropologists, we looked at the way how people themselves tried to rebuild, or where did they see perhaps certain traditions they wanted to keep, or what did they want to change, and how did their life changed by them living also in different environments. So that was already when I learned a bit about the joglo, limasan, etc. And it was actually then a few years later that once I was in Bali and I noticed, perhaps it already existed earlier, but I was not so much aware of it, how many joglos there actually are in Bali, and almost more than in Java, at least when you look at them carefully. And I thought, oh, that's really interesting, you know, especially also in the tourism sector, restaurants, etc. And so another time when I was in Bali again, and I had a bit of time, a few weeks, so I visited quite some of the workshops where they dismantle and then rebuild the joglo, or build new joglo, or with old materials but new buildings, or sell also some of the elements of joglo to either to restaurant owners, to people in other industries, or even overseas. So I visited some of these workshops, but also then the restaurants, the shops, etc. And because I thought it was interesting that it looks like an element of Javanese heritage may become then Balinese heritage, and certainly for Western or non-Indonesian tourists who go there, and the buildings look traditional in the sense, in an old style. So they may think, oh, this is Balinese architecture. They wouldn't. And I talked to some tourists who had no idea, of course, you know, where the buildings, where the style originally comes from. So I said, and what was interesting for me is coming from a country where buildings are very solid. I mean, you could not easily transfer an Austrian tradition, a farmer's house, to anywhere else. You know, it's just too heavy, too big, too clumsy. And that was interesting, that not only batik and sculptures can be transferred, but whole houses. I mean, within Java, it already was common for a longer period, but now it has become, buildings also have become like commodities that can be transferred somewhere else, and also to very other cultural contexts.
Okay, so because I read your paper, and then there is like a globalization and commodification of culture. So is that what you mean, that, you know, the culture can be modified, or maybe you can share your thought on that?
I mean, I'm not totally critical of it, you know, because I think that that's always been the case, you know, that culture has always been commodified in a certain way and changed certainly, and influenced others, you know. So I'm not a purist that say, so it once was in Java, it always has to stay in Java, or on the other hand, you know, Balinese. But on the other hand, of course, I also see the bit of a problem, perhaps, if, let's say, Javanese farmers or people who inherit a building and they cannot maintain it, and then sell it for perhaps for a cheap price sometimes, you know, and without being really aware of the consequences, then this is gone now forever, you know, the family heirloom or whatever it may be. And so I think I'm both ways, you know, and I think that's the good thing of anthropology or academia, that we are not really forced to have a strong opinion ourselves, but actually, well, the way how we are trained is that we should see what's happening and try and look through other people's eyes and find out what maybe their motivation to do it and why, but without judging and saying, oh, this is good or this is bad.
Gabriele, I believe that because you have a tremendous experiences as a researcher internationally, specifically in Indonesia. So could you share, you know, kind of like a best practice for Indonesian researchers or students, you know, in the anthropology area?
Well, I think I also tried to give this message to the students earlier today. I think it is important to be open and to be curious about the world around you, but wherever you go, and to ask what may be behind something that you hear or see. And I do still think that there is some value in going somewhere else to do research and not only in your own environment. And one of the reasons is that I think by having this outsider perspective, first of all, you see certain abnormalities or certain things or which may be normal in that culture, but it's not for you. You see it better, or rather than if you're part of that environment, that society. But then also when you come back, I think you can take this more outsider perspective, even when looking at your own society and questioning, why does this work this way? Why do we not go perhaps in another direction, etc. And I think that's necessary and it's needed. I would not say now more than ever, because it's always been, but I think it's important that we always question, really, is that what we're doing now and how we're thinking? Is that the only way or the best way? Or should we perhaps change something?
Yeah, I think that's very significant points, Gabriele. And then I know that you received UNIVIE International Award in 2017 for your achievement in establishing and promoting with the Indonesian universities. So what kind of collaborations, and then what is the impact of this strategic collaboration between University of Vienna or Austria in general with Indonesian universities?
I think one of the reasons why I got that award was that just a year or two before that, from our university, University of Vienna, we succeeded and to establish some relations with UGM, with Gadjah Mada University, at the level of Erasmus exchange program, and which was signed in at the level of the international office, both universities, but with a focus on anthropology department and later on also geography. So I'm very proud or very happy, let's say, about that we could actually from anthropology, that we could do that. And this enabled a few students, PhD level students had to be from our university to spend some time in Yogyakarta and vice versa. We had students coming to Vienna and also some of the staff. So it was that kind of exchange. And starting with that, we had already a few, some forms of collaboration before with UGM, but also with a few other universities, with, for instance, USU, so Universitas Sumatera Utara, and also UNSRAT in Manado. And but in the end, I think with Gadjah Mada it was the longest lasting one for various reasons, I guess. And further on, we had the opportunity also to invite more lecturers and also some students to Vienna to do research in Vienna. And I think that was something which hadn't been done before, because as I said in the beginning, that Europeans mainly went perhaps to Asia or other continents to study, but people from those countries had either less the opportunity or perhaps didn't also see the value in it to go to Europe, to not only to get a degree, but actually to study societies there. So I think this outsider perspective is also important and good for academics in Indonesia. They go, for instance, to a Western country and then have this kind of Indonesian perspective and look at our customs or at our politics or whatever, society. And I think this really is something which I hope it will continue, and with young colleagues from both universities, and not only these two universities, but we may hopefully be also able to include other universities and have this exchange, what I would call also, you can say at an eye level, and I think it's an important part also of what is now so much discussed, this decolonization.
Yeah.
And it's a catchword which become very popular, but I think on the small scale, this is also something where you can say decolonizing academic relations and learning from each other.
Yeah. Talking about collaboration, because you've mentioned that you do collaboration with many Indonesian universities, and then do you have any plans to collaborate with us, with UNES?
Well, as I must say, this invitation also, it has not come completely spontaneous, but only a few weeks in advance. So there hadn't been any concrete plans yet, and for me personally, of course, it may be a bit more difficult because I will retire at the end of this month.
Oh, okay.
And I hope I still have a sort of affiliation with academia, but it's not 100% clear in which way and what can be done. But of course, we have younger colleagues as well. And our university has the strategy or that for instance, MOUs only signed once there are already some forms of collaboration already exist, and that people already work together on the smaller scale perhaps, and then it can be extended. And I think that's actually very sensitive, or sensible, sorry, very sensible way of doing it, because I believe, in the small steps, especially, with collaboration, and you cannot start with a big project without knowing each other, and without knowing, do we have anything in common, do we share any interests? So I think first to look and say, well, I'm interested in such a topic, is there anyone else in your university, in your department? Is there perhaps we can have a little workshop together first, or we can do a small field work together and then publish something together. And this way more and more can grow. But I think both sides need a bit of patience and time, and I hope that with UNES, and so far it has been not only very generous and very welcoming, everything, but I think it's also UNES has great potential, and we would be proud and happy to continue communicating and perhaps even working together.
Yeah, because I think that there are so many potential areas that we can collaborate between University of Vienna and also UNES. Yeah, and then I agree with you that collaboration is, I think, the key, right? In this very competitive era now. Yeah. So Gabriele, you've mentioned that you are going to retire very soon. So what's your planning for your retirement? Are you going still engage with the academia, or maybe having another plans?
Well, I would like to keep a foot somehow in academia, but in a different way. Of course, I will retire from the current position, and which should also give me more freedom. I hope so. And I don't have any really strategies exactly what to do, but I think there are many things that are still interesting. There are a few projects that perhaps I can be involved in one way or the other, and I also would like to start learning a new language.
Oh, what kind of language? May I know?
Slovenian.
Slovenian.
Yeah,
Wow, that's
yeah.
an interesting choice.
Yeah, because I have family in Slovenia.
Okay.
So my mother originally is from Slovenia,
Okay.
but and I visited many times, but I never learned the language.
Yeah.
And so I thought when I retire,
Yeah.
I will do
Wow.
that.
That's, I think, like a very great new adventure.
Yeah, yeah.
To learn something new, right?
Yeah, it's a Slavic language, very different. But at the same time, I hope to have the time also and be able to spend a bit of time there. And so, but that's only one among several other ideas, and nothing's been really set up yet. But I think that's also fine, because I think a couple of months, a bit of quiet life would be fine too.
Okay, well, I think that's very great plan, Gabriele. So I think that's wrapping up our conversation for today. I would like to thank you once again for coming and then for sharing your amazing knowledge and experience about the Austria and Indonesia's anthropology landscape. So thank you, stay well, and I wish you all the best with your visit here in Indonesia.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me again, and I wish you all the best, you and your colleagues and your students, and I very much hope that we will meet again, that I will have another chance to visit. But please, if you ever come to Europe, just let me know, and we will
my
be
pleasure.
grateful.
Very kind of you, Gabriele. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. So that's wrap up our conversation for today. See you in the next episode. Take care.